Jimmy Kimmel might be one of the most familiar faces in American late-night television today, but in the early days of his career, things looked very different. During a recent appearance on the podcast Where Everybody Knows Your Name on October 22nd, Kimmel opened up to actor Ted Danson about just how difficult those first few years were. What he revealed was not the story of a confident host on the rise, but of a man overwhelmed by pressure, uncertainty, and exhaustion. In a rare moment of honesty, he admitted that in the early days of Jimmy Kimmel Live, he sometimes prayed that ABC would cancel his own show. Kimmel explained that when the show first premiered in 2003, he had no idea what he was doing. The format was new, the expectations were enormous, and the responsibility of running a nightly program felt crushing. He described those early months as chaotic and unmanageable, saying, "I didn't know what I was doing, and I would pray that they canceled the show sometimes." He clarified that he never wanted to quit himself, not because of pride or ambition, but because he didn't want to let down the dozens of people working for him. In his words, "I didn't want to disappoint the people who had jobs because of me." But despite that sense of responsibility, the constant pressure took a toll. He recalled feeling burned out and disoriented, saying, "I just couldn't do it anymore." When Jimmy Kimmel Live first went on air, it was far from the polished, steady late-night institution that it would eventually become. In those early months, the show struggled with almost every element of production. There were nights when they didn't even have guests confirmed until hours before broadcast. Kimmel said that there were times it would be 5:30 in the afternoon, and the team still hadn't booked anyone for that night's program. In a live television environment, where everything depends on timing and preparation, such uncertainty was disastrous. Kimmel recalled having to personally call friends, comedians, and entertainers just to fill the schedule. "That's not how you want to go into a live broadcast," he admitted. "You can't operate that way." Because of that instability, Kimmel leaned heavily on his personal network to keep the show afloat. He regularly invited his then-girlfriend, comedian Sarah Silverman, to appear. Friends like Adam Carolla, David Allen Greyer, Anthony Anderson, and Kathy Griffin often filled the guest seats when no one else was available. Kimmel later expressed deep gratitude toward them, saying, "God bless them because I needed them, and they were always ready at a moment's notice to come on." Those early appearances weren't just cameos. They were acts of loyalty that helped him survive the show's most uncertain period. In hindsight, those years tested not only Kimmel's skills as a host, but also his mental and emotional endurance. He had transitioned from being known as a comedic radio personality and co-host of The Man Show to being the face of a national late-night broadcast. The difference in pressure was immense. Unlike pre-recorded shows, Jimmy Kimmel Live went out to audiences in real time, leaving little room for error. Every mistake was visible, every awkward pause magnified. Behind the scenes, the production team was still finding its rhythm. The writers were new, the segments untested, and the host himself was still figuring out how to carry an hour-long show night after night. Kimmel has said in multiple interviews that he learned almost everything on the job. He had to discover what kind of humor worked in front of a studio audience, how to conduct interviews with guests who sometimes didn't want to be there, and how to balance comedy with commentary. Many nights, he went home unsure whether the show would even survive another week. ABC had invested heavily in the program, but ratings were inconsistent, and critics were not kind. For a time, Jimmy Kimmel Live seemed destined to be another short-lived experiment in late-night television. Gradually, however, things began to change. The team started to find a rhythm. Segments became more structured, recurring bits were introduced, and the writing staff grew more confident. Kimmel began developing his on-screen persona, not just as a comedian, but as a conversationalist capable of mixing satire, warmth, and sincerity. He incorporated creative sketches and running jokes that gave the show a distinctive tone, different from the more traditional formats of The Tonight Show or Late Show with David Letterman. As the show matured, audiences began to respond. Ratings improved, the humor sharpened, and Kimmel himself started to feel more comfortable in the role. The prayers for cancellation were replaced by a genuine desire to keep improving. Over the next 2 decades, Jimmy Kimmel Live would evolve into one of the pillars of American late-night entertainment. It became known not only for celebrity interviews and comedy sketches, but also for moments of cultural and political significance. From heartfelt monologues about healthcare and gun violence to playful roasts of Hollywood's biggest stars, Kimmel turned his once uncertain platform into a space where both humor and humanity could coexist. The same man who once felt lost before airtime was now commanding an audience of millions. But even after years of success, Kimmel has never been entirely free from controversy. His willingness to speak candidly about social and political issues has often drawn both praise and backlash. That tension reached a new peak earlier this year when Kimmel found himself suspended by ABC following remarks about conservative commentator Charlie Kirk's death. The comments, which the network described as ill-timed and insensitive, led to a temporary shutdown of Jimmy Kimmel Live. ABC pulled the show from its schedule for several weeks in what it called a period of reflection. The decision quickly sparked a nationwide debate about free speech, humor, and the boundaries of public commentary. Reactions were divided. Some critics argued that the suspension was appropriate, saying that a public figure with Kimmel's platform should be more careful about the timing and tone of his remarks. Others saw the move as an overreach, an attempt to silence a comedian known for his outspoken views. Within days, hundreds of celebrities, including Ben Affleck, Jennifer Aniston, and other high-profile figures, signed an open letter defending Kimmel. The letter argued that the suspension was a threat to free expression, and that comedy must be allowed to tackle uncomfortable subjects, even when the jokes do not land perfectly. For its part, Disney, the parent company of ABC, released a carefully worded statement saying that after thoughtful conversations, Kimmel would return to the air on September 23rd. The company explained that it was important to take time to reflect, but ultimately decided that Kimmel's long-standing contributions to the network and his remorse over the incident warranted his reinstatement. When Kimmel returned to television, he addressed the controversy briefly, but did not dwell on it, instead focusing on the show's continued commitment to humor and conversation. The episode marked another turning point in his career, a reminder that even established entertainers remain vulnerable to the shifting dynamics of public opinion and corporate accountability. Looking back at Kimmel's journey, the contrast between his beginnings and his present status is striking. In 2003, he was a first-time host barely keeping his show afloat. Today, he is one of the longest-serving figures in modern late-night television, rivaling legends like David Letterman and Jay Leno in longevity and influence. His story is a case study in perseverance under pressure. It also reflects how the entertainment industry often tests its talent to their breaking point before success arrives. Industry analysts have often noted that Kimmel's path mirrors the evolution of television itself. In the early 2000s, late-night programming was still dominated by network giants, and there was little room for experimentation. Jimmy Kimmel Live broke that mold by blending irreverent comedy with heartfelt authenticity. The show's more relaxed tone and willingness to blur the lines between celebrity culture and real-world issues helped redefine what late night could be. Over the years, Kimmel's emotional moments, such as his monologues about his son's heart condition or his appeals for healthcare reform, brought a new kind of vulnerability to the genre. They showed that humor and compassion could coexist in the same space. At the same time, his career has also highlighted the risks of that approach. In a media landscape increasingly shaped by social media outrage and political polarization, every comment carries weight. Kimmel's critics often accuse him of bias, while his supporters see him as one of the few mainstream hosts willing to speak truth to power. That ongoing tension has become part of his brand, intentionally or not. His recent suspension served as a reminder of how precarious that balance can be, even for someone with 2 decades of experience behind the desk. Yet the thread running through Kimmel's story, from his prayers for cancellation to his public controversies, is persistence. He did not walk away when things were hard, nor did he allow setbacks to define him. When he started, he was a comedian struggling to fill airtime. Today, he is a veteran host who has weathered criticism, corporate scrutiny, and cultural shifts. Through it all, he has remained a visible figure in American pop culture, often using humor to process both personal and national events. Colleagues who have worked with Kimmel describe him as meticulous and self-critical, often harder on himself than anyone else could be. That trait, they say, explains both his early frustration and his later success. During the show's first year, he was deeply involved in every detail, from writing jokes to managing production schedules. Even as the workload became overwhelming, he refused to delegate much responsibility, fearing that doing so would make him appear less capable. Over time, learning to trust his team became one of his biggest challenges and ultimately one of his greatest strengths. The stability of Jimmy Kimmel Live in the years that followed owes much to that lesson. In interviews, Kimmel has acknowledged that his early struggles taught him humility. They made him appreciate not just fame or ratings, but the people who helped him along the way. The writers, producers, and friends who believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. He often jokes that those chaotic first months were like going to television boot camp, except that the drills were live broadcasts watched by millions. But behind the humor lies a genuine sense of gratitude. The same friends who filled in as emergency guests became lifelong collaborators, and the network that nearly canceled him became the foundation for his 2-decade-long career. Today, Jimmy Kimmel Live continues to be one of ABC's most successful late-night properties, known for its viral sketches, celebrity interviews, and musical performances. Kimmel's ability to adapt, embracing digital platforms, producing online exclusive content, and staying relevant to younger audiences, has helped him maintain his place in a rapidly changing media environment. While newer hosts experiment with streaming formats and alternative comedy, Kimmel has managed to preserve the traditional appeal of live television while keeping it modern and accessible. Despite the ups and downs, Kimmel remains candid about his career's unusual trajectory. He often describes himself as lucky to have lasted this long in an industry where shows are routinely canceled after a few months. But beneath the humility is a record of hard work and resilience. Every major challenge, from his uncertain debut to his recent suspension, has added another layer to the public's understanding of who he is. Not just a comedian, but a human being navigating the complex intersection of entertainment, media, and personal conviction. In a way, his story also serves as a reflection of how the public's relationship with media personalities has evolved. Viewers today expect authenticity from the people they watch, and Kimmel's willingness to share his doubts, frustrations, and mistakes makes him relatable in a way that many of his predecessors were not. When he confessed to praying for his show's cancellation, audiences didn't see weakness, they saw honesty. And that honesty, perhaps more than anything else, has sustained his connection with fans for more than 20 years. 2 decades after his nervous first broadcast, Jimmy Kimmel stands as a veteran of an industry that almost broke him. The same man who once picked up the phone to beg friends to appear on his struggling program now interviews presidents, world leaders, and global celebrities. The studio that was once barely holding itself together now operates like a well-oiled machine. The journey from chaos to confidence wasn't easy, but it was transformative. It turned a reluctant host into one of television's most enduring figures. From those anxious early days in 2003 to the controversies of 2024 and beyond, Kimmel's career has been a continuous balancing act between humor and responsibility, freedom and accountability, confidence and humility. His story is not simply one of success, it is one of endurance. It shows that even in an industry built on glamour and laughter, the path to lasting achievement is often marked by doubt, discipline, and the courage to keep showing up, night after night, when it would be easier to walk away. And as the cameras continue to roll on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the host who once prayed for his show's cancellation now represents something deeper. The resilience of a performer who learned to turn uncertainty into strength, mistakes into lessons, and fear into the fuel for one of the most remarkable careers in late-night television.